Welcome back to Sober in the Sun. In this video, I want to talk about, well, saying no. I don't want to sound like Nancy Reagan. It's not a just say no kind of a thing, but I want to talk about the idea of permission and alcohol. And just to sort of prove my point, what I want to do for you is, show you a little video because I do like the videos. So let's have a quick look at this one and you can make up your mind as to what the view of permission from this advert is. I don't know whether your experience with banks is anything like that. It's not exactly the way I feel when I come out of the bank. Anyway, there's one word, of course, that is completely and utterly missing from that advert. Now, if you spend a moment or two thinking about it, what is that advert saying? Is anything denied to Dave there? Or is he just given whatever he asks for? And I think that's a very interesting point about permission and alcohol. The default setting with alcohol is always yes, isn't it? The idea is that you are going to say yes to having a drink. You will not say no to it. And look, I mean, we could talk for a while about how that tends to bleed into other areas. Once we've had a few drinks, we don't tend to say no to greasy food. We make poor decisions about our behavior, sometimes our relationships, sometimes even taking other drugs and things like that. So the default idea with alcohol is that the word yes is very much tied up with it. Now, that poses a bit of a problem for us, doesn't it? Because if we want to say no to a drink, how do we do that? Well, look, the most difficult thing about saying no to something is saying no to yourself. As soon as you are happy to say, no, I don't want to drink, and actually mean it, then you have already put yourself in a very good position to say no to other people. How do you say no to yourself? Well, that's very easy. We've already talked about that. You get to grips with your beliefs, start to manage the thought process. Once you can do that, you can say no to yourself. Once you say no to yourself, actually saying no to other people is quite easy. However, it is something that a lot of people do struggle with, particularly this time of year. When you're out at the barbecue, you're probably socializing a little bit more in the sunshine, you're on holiday, you're more likely to be asked whether you want a drink. So, how do you go about saying no to somebody? Well, I think one of the first things to realize is that most people don't care. Most people don't care whether you have a drink or not. So, actually, the easiest way to say no to most people is simply to say no. And as soon as you say no, they drop it and move on and get on with their life. That is most people. However, what we tend to remember is those few people that actually make a big deal out of it, keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. So let's think about those people. Where are they coming from? Why are they trying to convince you to have a drink? Basically, they're trying to convince you to have a drink because they're having a drink and either they don't want to drink on their own or they don't want people to not drink. Because if people start not drinking, it starts to question their decision to drink. And they're doing enough of that themselves. So probably there is a bit of their mind that knows they are drinking too much and shouldn't be drinking. And that worries them a little bit. And seeing you not drinking kicks off all of that worry and that fear. So you've got to realize that when most people are kind of badgering you and insisting that you have a drink, it's because they're coming from a place of fear and worry about their own drinking, which means you should start off with not this sense of annoyance, but this sense of compassion. They are suffering. That is why they are trying to get you to have a drink. So you start off with that mindset. That does make things easier because it means you don't escalate things. If you start off with this kind of feeling of annoyance, then you tend to kind of match them where they're at. They're kind of pushy and a bit annoying, so you get pushy and you get a bit annoying, and then you just banging up against each other, and that never works, does it? But if you can start off with that point of compassion, realizing that they're probably only doing it because they're suffering, then you aren't going to be as argumentative. You're not going to be pushing back against them as much. And I think that's one of the real big things to sort of try and do. Don't push back against them, because the more you push back against them, the more they will push back against you. So instead of saying, "Oh, I don't drink, drinking's for idiots," maybe say something along the lines of, "Look, I'm not drinking at the moment, and it seems to be working out for me." It's actually a really very effective phrase that disarms a lot of people like that. "I'm just not drinking at the moment, and it seems to be working out for me." Now, I say that quite a lot, even though I know I'm never going to drink again and it's the best thing I ever did. But I'll still say, I'm not drinking at the moment, it seems to be working out for me, for the simple reason that I know it doesn't push up against anybody else's ego. So it minimizes it, and it makes it sound a lot less like I'm saying, "Do you know what? You're an idiot. You should stop drinking," and more like, "Oh, there's something probably a bit wrong with me. That's why I'm not drinking." So I think that phrase is really worth remembering. "I'm not drinking at the moment, and it seems to be working out for me." Absolutely believe that you will never drink again, and believe that it is the best thing that you have ever done. But maybe try saying, "Yeah, I'm not drinking at the moment. It seems to be working out for me." You get a lot less aggression. The other really good tactic for people like that is change the subject. Now, anybody who's giving you a hard time about stopping drinking is likely to fall into that character type that likes the sound of their own voice. So one of the easiest ways to get them to leave you alone is to get them talking about something else. Something along the lines of, "Oh, do you know what? I'm really glad you're here this evening, Dave, because I've been wondering whether, United have signed the right forward for the coming football season. I think they're a little bit light up front, and I think that young French guy that they signed isn't really going to cut it." By which point, Dave will now be on a rant about United's new forward, and he will have totally forgotten he was trying to persuade you to have a drink. So if you can change the subject, particularly if you can get them onto one of their pet hobby horses, true, it might be a bit boring, but they will definitely leave you alone, and they will not be talking about alcohol anymore, because they'll just be expounding their views on the universe. So those are a few kind of handy things to do. Understand where people are coming from, use little phrases like, "I'm not drinking at the moment, and it seems to be working out for me," and changing the subject. Ultimately, if anybody is giving you a really hard time, though, the best plan is to walk away. Now, what can you do to make sure that you're ready for a social event if something's coming up and you're a bit worried about it? Maybe a wedding. These often happen in the summer, don't they? If you've got something big like that, then think about it. Think about what you're going to say beforehand. Think about the kind of people that might give you a hard time. Have a plan. Have an idea of when you want to leave by, because these things always go south at about 10 o'clock, don't they? It's rarely worth staying after then, because by that point everybody's drunk and just annoying, and you just go home, get a decent night's sleep, wake up fresh as a daisy the next morning, and call them up early and ask them how they're feeling now. That's always quite an enjoyable thing to do. So, have a bit of a plan. If you've got a big event coming up, think about what you're going to say. Think about when you're going to leave. Think about who you're going to be with and how they might react. So that's a little something to get your teeth into. In the next Sober in the Sun video, I'm going to wrap it all up and pull it all together. So I'll see you on that one. Thanks very much.